You just always remember as I get into this, what we're going to do now is I'm going to just share some thoughts I have about where kind of stage setting for what we'll be talking about throughout today. Also do a little context setting in where the economy is regionally. Our focus on this is certainly going to be things that could be any place in the country, could be any place in the world, but a lot of it we're going to be talking today about things that are specific to AI and what we're doing here in the region, our opportunities, our challenges. But as I start to get in this, just in the back of your head, just remember, I am an economist, I practice the dismal science. So just kind of forewarning about some expectations here. But in any case, well, good morning. And it's not going to be any surprise if I tell you that with everything going on, including technology change, we're in the midst of a labor market revolution that this region hasn't seen. I mean, the fundamentals of what shapes the 3.5 million jobs we have in this area is changing. The underlying dynamic, the basis of it, groundwork, if you will. While the DOGE cuts were at best haphazard, arguably ineffective, and in some respects just plain cruel, the underlying motivation has merit. We should be using modern technologies to enhance efficiencies and lower the cost of delivering on government services, which, of course, in the long run, probably means getting by with fewer federal workers than we've had traditionally. The DC metro area represents this unique ecosystem unlike any place else in America. Federal government, defense contractors, consulting firms, lobbyists, tech firms, nonprofits, all of this is just scattered across the region. And the fact of the matter is, each of those sectors face distinct challenges and opportunities in the adoption and use of artificial intelligence, particularly as it transforms the nature of work. And why does it matter for us to be doing this right now? Why did Ron and his team feel that this is the time to do it? Well, since 2023, AI adoption has accelerated from experimental pilot programs to full-scale implementation. And let me just say as an aside, full-scale implementation even when the technology isn't ready for it, quite frankly, as we've seen. The technology that seemed futuristic just a couple of years ago is now processing security clearances, drafting policy briefs, analyzing intelligence data. It's being used. So as we start our conversations today, it's important to understand that context, but also let me give you a few little things about where we stand in the general economy. The Washington metropolitan region has traditionally boasted one of the most resilient labor markets in the country. We may not have really see the big highs that you sometimes get when the economy's booming, but we rarely have much of an impact when the economy goes into a recession or a financial crisis or something, and that's that underpinning of the federal government. And even now, with an unemployment rate that this year so far has gone up 150 basis points, we're still below the national average on unemployment rate. But let's consider some of the wider context. So let's broaden out just a moment and talk about the DMV. So we can call it the three-state area without insulting somebody who doesn't believe DC is a state. Okay, fine. You're going to honk off somebody, right, when you do these kind of things. But the DMV has seen some modest job gains, about 1.4% through August. Keeping in mind, August is the last data that we have on the market because that was the last one the BLS did before they shut down or were stopped from publishing. And that's in the face of losing about 36,000 federal jobs so far this year. I mean, that's a lot of jobs to take out of the economy. And that's just the federal jobs, that's not the contractors. The district, as expected, has taken the brunt of that, about 25,000 federal job losses in the District of Columbia, but they're still showing just slightly up in terms of total employment. Virginia has seen the fewest impacts on direct federal jobs, about 11,500, and their growth overall in the state has been about 1.4% this year. The surprising one, our first surprise of the day, Maryland. Now, Maryland has lost about 15,000 federal jobs so far this year, which, if you think on a proportional basis, is actually a bigger hit than what we've seen in Virginia. But Maryland has had overall total job growth of about 2.1% so far this year. which doesn't exactly fit some of the narrative of our Virginia state leaders at the moment, I'm afraid, but it's just a really interesting kind of thing. Now, mind you, I will tell you very specifically that is not growth happening in Prince George's and Montgomery County, but this is Baltimore and some other areas of the state. The federal government employs now about 353,000 people, and keeping in mind that that's out of about 3.4 million total. So it is still one of our biggest sectors, but not our biggest sector. Professional and business services is about 800,000 jobs in our region. Now, while that sector has not done too badly in this calendar year, we actually started seeing in mid-2024 a downturn. And if I look at this past August versus August a year ago, that sector is down about 19,000 jobs in this region, which is a combination of some things that have been happening with some of the things, USAID contracts and stuff like that, but also a continuing reflection of labor force availability challenges that we will talk about here in just a little bit. Private education health services up a little bit this year, about 11,000 jobs, but unfortunately, a lot of that is not necessarily the high wage sector. These are home health aides, teacher aides, things like that. So this is, if you think about changing those jobs, the valuation, leisure and hospitality, surprisingly, is actually up a little bit this year, even though we've lost a good bit of international travel. But just to put it on scale, it takes 4 of those leisure and hospitality jobs to represent the economic activity of one of those professional services jobs. So if you start getting into a trade, your job count may stay the same, but your overall total output is going to be declining, and that has implications for tax base and everything else in the region. With DOGE, the fork in the road, the rifts, contract cancellations, shutdowns, the furloughs turning into terminations, all this stuff that we're seeing going on now, it's just really very challenging at the moment. And that doesn't mean that we don't have opportunities. According to the data, we have these web scraping programs. There are about 70,000 job openings in this region. One of our key challenges, though, is how do you match that up? And just a basis analysis that I ran earlier in the year is maybe about a 30% overlap, if you're just talking about what skills are jobs. Let's face it, there are not many federal workers that want to go to work at Chick-fil-A, all right, on average. Even though the sandwiches are not bad, you get a little benefit out of that, right? But there are, we mentioned this a little bit in our session in August, that I think it's really important to understand that we can talk about shifting skills and some of the stuff that Alex Warfinger is going to talk about some of those things in the training programs. But I think we have to be aware of the sheer cultural aspects of what's going on. So for example, I'm going to just hypothesize to you that if you're working in a federal government and a little bit into some contractors, the number one thing that matters more than anything else is compliance. Are you in compliance with the rules? Are you in compliance? Do you follow what the law says or what the policy says? If I'm talking about the private sector, compliance is important to a little bit. It's not unimportant, but innovation and competitive advantage is what matters most. And that's a cultural shift that doesn't just happen automatically. The other is, quite frankly, people who chose to come here to work in the public sector and nonprofits are more mission-driven. They want to change the country, their neighborhoods, the world. If I am a talented software engineer working in cybersecurity, if I want to make a point of making money, I go to Silicon Valley. If I want to change the world, I come to DC. Now, and that's a difference, and one that we need to take account of. So what are we going to see over the next few years with the AI for us to think about? Think about what we're doing now. Paula mentioned in terms of some of these base levels, of doing things of organization, summarizing, and all that. Unfortunately, that is going to hit entry-level workers. We're seeing this at university now. Our kids who are graduating now are having a harder time finding that first one because you have companies that are looking at, can I save labor? And let's face it, there's going to be a real motive to use AI to, I don't want to use the word displace, but to avoid adding staff just simply because, remember, companies get rewarded in their quarterly reports if you lower that labor cost compared to the revenues. So there's going to be some of that going on. And we're going to have to figure out that balance of it. In the midterm, of course, it's going to get some, we are going to gain advantages. We're going to become more productive. You know, you think about, Paula mentioned about, you know, check your references or whatever. But if you think about taking that first step of just go out and find me some stuff to help me create an idea, you know, yeah, that's very valuable. But then it's always one of those things, and I will tell you this explicitly, AI is good at a lot of things so far. Don't ever trust a number that it gives you, right? And what I tell the students in my data classes that I teach is, look, you're going to have to look it up to confirm that it's the right number, so you might as well learn to, or just do it yourself, right? But there is going to be a time as the models get better. The other thing that I want to take into a little bit of account, though, is the real importance of us recognizing the human connection. There are many things we do. Judgment. You think about negotiations for trade deals. You think about the stuff that we do where you basically have to understand cultural context, where you have to understand that person, take visual cues from them. AI can't do that and is not going to be able to do that. And in fact, we need to get to the point where we are thinking about human ingenuity, human intelligence, and what we might call original intelligence as being key factors that we need to augment. And we need companies to be aware of it, but we as individuals, as employees, as workers, need to also be self-aware of what our skills and our originality is. Because if all we can offer the employer is basically derivative kind of knowledge, we will lose our job eventually, all right? So there's that too. So the question is, testing it and training for it. How do we put in training programs that teach us best how to use that? Now, of course, we're going to accomplish all of that today. We want to make sure that the digital transformations that we're doing serves workers, not just the bottom line of organizations. The future of work could start very well in this region. It could start here. It could start with us today as we figure out these parameters of how do we move forward in a rational way that does realize the economic opportunities facing us, but also doesn't forget the people who are actually doing this work and how we manage these processes. And so with that, I'm going to stop. I'm going to say, now, Ron, did I set the expectations high enough for what we're going to accomplish today? Yeah, there you go. But we're going to move right into the rest of the program. And I will tell you that if you have questions about any of this stuff, I'm going to be around today, all day, so feel free to stop and ask questions. But other than that, this is going to be a lot of fun today, guys. So have fun, and we move on to our next speaker.